Hey guys, and welcome to our Diabetes Chat Stories. Tonight we are talking all things hybrid closed loop systems. Super excited, and I hope that you enjoy tonight. If you are joining us on Twitter, hello, and hopefully you're joining us on our Hangout space, diabeteschat.net/hangout, and you can chat away and come say hello to everyone there. So come join the chat tonight, and we'll get your questions to our amazing Professor Partha Kar, and also we'll be joined by Yasmin Hopkins, who will be sharing her lived experiences of hybrid closed loop. So you can hashtag diabetes chat and get involved as well. So what we're going to do to start, I've got a video I would like to share with you, and this is from Digibete. So thank you to Digibete for sharing it with us, and it explains a little bit about hybrid closed loop. So enjoy.
How closed-loop systems work. Closed-loop insulin delivery systems are also known as automated insulin delivery systems, or the artificial pancreas. But what exactly is closed-loop insulin delivery, and how does it work? A closed-loop system tries to mimic what the human pancreas would do by automatically calculating how much insulin to give a person with diabetes to keep their blood sugar or glucose levels in the normal range. A closed-loop insulin delivery system consists of three components: a glucose sensor, a closed-loop algorithm, and an insulin pump. The continuous glucose monitor, or glucose sensor, is applied to the skin and measures glucose levels automatically every few minutes. The glucose levels are sent in real time to a computer program or algorithm. The algorithm then calculates how much insulin the person with diabetes needs to keep their glucose levels in the normal range. This could be lots of insulin if glucose levels are high, or no insulin at all if glucose levels are low. The algorithm tells the pump how much insulin to deliver. All currently available closed-loop systems are hybrid systems. This means that the person with diabetes still needs to count carbohydrates and tell the closed-loop system when they are going to eat a meal. But between meals and overnight, the closed-loop system automatically administers the optimal dose of insulin to keep glucose levels in the target range. Parents and carers are able to see their child's glucose levels at all times via an app on their phones, even when the child is not with them. This helps parents feel reassured and means that children can be looked after by other caregivers, such as school staff or grandparents.
So thank you to Digibete for sharing that video with us on Diabetes Chat tonight. We are now going to look at our schedule and show you guys what is coming up for the next couple of hours, or an hour or so, I should say. So we've done our intro. We're going to be joined by Professor Kar in a minute. We'll do a live Q&A. So in this section, we will do about 20 minutes with Mary and Philippa. They've got loads of questions for Partha. And in the meantime, we want you guys to hashtag diabetes chat, or you can post in the chat room and you can ask your questions to Partha there, diabeteschat.net/hangout. And then we'll look at some community views of hybrid closed looping. And then we will talk and hear from Yasmin Hopkins before finishing our evening. So without further ado, let's bring up Professor Partha Kar. Hello, Partha.
Hello, hello. Evening.
How are you?
I'm good. Not bad at all.
Brilliant. Thank you for joining us today. And just before we hand over to Philippa and Mary, who are going to host our first section, I wanted to bring this slide to people's attention, because you can see the evolution of technology provision that has happened since 2017. And you can see all the amazing things that have happened and are continuing to happen. And we just want to thank you for everything you've done in that roadmap. And now looking at 2023 hybrid closed loop. And it's just so exciting, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it also shows that if a community gets together, what can be done? I think that's important. I have never made any two bones about it. It's not due to the system falling in line that made it happen. It was the power of the community.
Yep.
And long may it continue. Your voices matter, and you can see it on the screen that it matters. So that's important to have that.
And especially the news today, we must mention it. The nice news today for type 2s. Do you want to share that quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately, we are in a place whereby nowadays we are seeing type 2 diabetes in younger age groups, right? Less than 18, and I think on last count we got about nearly 2,000 children below the age of 18 who have got type 2 diabetes in this country, which is probably not the best, indictment of a. But on the other flip side, there are many reasons for developing type 2 diabetes, and it's not the fault of the children who got it necessarily. So we should give them all the opportunities they have, all the technology we can to try and see what we can do to help them. And this is part of it. So, absolutely delighted that's been extended through. And, my vision, I've always said, we've done it with type 1, this should become standard care for everybody with diabetes. That has to be the aim going forward.
Absolutely. Brilliant stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring forward Mary and Philippa. Hello to you guys.
Hello. Evening.
Evening.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
Okay?
Thank you.
So what we're going to do is we're going to hand over to Mary and Philippa, and they're going to host the next 20 minutes or so. We've got some questions for Partha. And then in the meantime, guys, if you've got any questions, we want to hear your voices. It's important to hear from the community. We can get your questions live to Partha. And yeah, let's do it. Let's crack on. Over to you guys. Go on, Mary. Go on, Philippa.
I'll let you start, Mary.
Oh, that was the benefits one. So, yeah, Partha, can you talk to us about what the benefits would be, like with hybrid closed loop for the community, where for them, but also for you guys as clinicians too, because it makes your life easier too. But how does it help us first?
So I think people need to be careful that it's not suddenly sold as this magic bullet which is going to do everything. Hybrid closed loop isn't like having an artificial heart, right? You've still got lots of work to do. And I think people need to remember that. I think a lot of people do realize that, but there is also a lot of misunderstanding as to what, and we see that even with pumps. Forget about closed loops. People come and ask for pumps, and when you ask them, what do you think a pump's going to do? And they say, well, it'll do everything for me. And you go, not really. It won't. So I think, for example, when we do pump conversions, we always do what we call a pros and cons chat for half an hour. We sort of sit down and go like, look, this is the plus, this is the minus. So I think with hybrid closed loops, to your question, I think if it's in the right hands, right guidance, right support, right place mentally as well, that's important. It could help. It's not a magic bullet by any means whatsoever. But for professionals, I think, again, it's about probably a degree of satisfaction to seeing that there is something that we're offering people which is making things better. So that's quite good. And also people who are in that space, which is what we have seen with Libra and Dexcom, my clinics have transformed nowadays, right? How it works. It's much more slicker. Patients come much better. They're much more in charge of their condition. So I think those are the plus and minus. So there's plenty of evidence about its plus, which is why we're discussing it. But I don't think we should shy away from saying there are negatives as well, and we've seen that even with sensors. Numbers are not necessarily always a good thing for people who struggle with the numbers and the fluctuations. And then you've got, the normal things online where people believe that perfect diabetes is a straight line, which isn't true either. So I think we all need to bear that in mind as we go along, rather than, and there's so many examples of people coming off pumps and technology because it becomes overbearing. So plus and minus to everything in life. So it is.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we've spoken about the benefits. Could you talk us through some of the main points of the new proposed NICE technical appraisal document and sort of the main points and what stage we're at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first draft obviously came out and caused a lot of excitement, which came out on the 10th of January. And we were obviously aware of it. We've been working very closely with them, trying to tweak this, tweak that. And I think that's the first port of call. So understandably, people came out and said, and as ever with these things, right? Some people are delighted if they fit in. If they don't fit in, they're not delighted. Yeah, that's the way it works. And we've been through this road with Libra in the past, right? So those who fit in it. So I think it's an opportunity. It was an opportunity given, and people have responded in droves, which is great, right? So, for example, people have raised the question: is it right that children should have to prove their case before getting there? That's different to the last guideline. Is it right any adult should have to have bad control, so to speak? 8% is a number the right approach? People have questioned as to what sort of education is it? Are they suggesting it should be mandatory? That's not right either, especially if people can't get to the education courses. So I think there have been lots of queries. So that's that stage at. So all the data has been collected. And at the moment, NICE are looking at it. They're doing the financial calculations about cost effectiveness. And we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in a bit. And 24th of May is what we call the final meeting, which I'll be attending. We discuss all things about it. After that, they take all our views, then the committee goes away and makes the final call, and hopefully sometime in June, which is what we expect, it comes out, and then it's open to, then comes the most critical phase. It's a bit like the wedding bit, whereby forever hold your peace bit, and that's the bit whereby people can throw in legal challenges if they're not happy. For example, industry, not saying individuals. And if they do it, then obviously we're stuck with legal things. So hopefully that's not the case. So we'll be keeping our fingers crossed that nobody gets a hump and decides to sort of take us to court. But if that happens, then then it's done and it out. And then we hope to then roll from October. So that's the plan at the moment.
So the criteria that were in there, as I remember it, were mainly on HbA1c.
Yeah. So which is what we have challenged. So my official challenge on that has been very clear that why isn't there disabling hypos and stuff like that? Because you could have an HbA1c of 6.3 and be having hypos left, right, and center. So that's all in there. That point has been made very clearly by us. We have asked clarification about the pregnancy bit, what that means. Because one of the worst things that we could ever do is put a woman on a closed loop and then say, well, you've had your baby, thanks very much. I mean, that just ethically is going to be a nightmare to walk into.
One of our questions later.
But we've asked clarification on those because I think they need to be clarified, because otherwise it puts healthcare professional in a really tricky position, because no healthcare professional wants to take anything off it. And that's what opens up the variation, doesn't it? Because, if it's in my area, nobody's going to take them off. I can tell you that right now. But I know many places where they will do it because they feel they've been told to do so. So those bits are there in the mix. Let's see what the final call is. But I don't think A1C alone can be a marker. I think there should be other markers. That's not how diabetes works, as we very well know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 400,000 with type 1 in the UK, and whatever the final criteria comes out,
version, yes,
whatever happens, somebody's going to come first, but we know there's limitations and resource issues. Who do you think that would be?
So, recently, you guys must have seen, I recently did this on social media deliberately, right? Put it out there on every forum to ask people. So, I think people said, well, and I think what I always ask people is that this is not a criteria list of X is going ahead. This is a bit more saying, even for argument's sake, if NICE tomorrow said, you know what, everybody can have it, right? Let's just say everybody can have it. Well, we can't give it to everybody simultaneously. So somebody will have to go for it. That's just the whole nature of human physiology. And in that case, the question then becomes is that should children go ahead of adults? Should adults with certain conditions go ahead of the others? And I think that's the discussion which we need to do. I think as NHS England, to say, where do you start first? Do you, for example, say, hey, listen, they're on a pump and a tech and they're struggling. Do we connect them? Do we go first with them? Because they're trained on the pump. Their training needs will be lower. You go like, you know what? I would love to give you a closed loop, but I've been stopped so far, but I'm not ready. You are ready. I'm ready. You know a lot about the pump. You cut through the education needs. You can move quicker, right? And that would be, so those are the key decisions, because to me, it makes a lot of sense. Because, for example, let's say, for argument, you come to my clinic and you're on a pump and a sensor, which is not connected. I'll go like, do you want to switch it on? And the answer is, of course I do, right? And then in that case, that's done within, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. So rather than, and do we that, which, as you know, will be slightly different if you're starting from scratch, from somebody who has never seen a pump. And is it the right thing to put them on a closed loop straight away? Is it, do they need some time with the pump first before good? I don't know the answer to that. So I think that will be slightly different as you go along. But if you ask who will go first, I think pediatric units will run with what they do. They look after children. So that's not going to be a fight in the adult side, so to speak. In the adult side, I think the question will become, do we go pumps first, right? Because you can get the volume moving quickly. And then you open up the space to people who are really struggling. And then do you work from people, depending on what the criteria, do you say, right, I've got patients who are having disabling hypos. We go with them. Do we go with higher A1C and work their way down? That sort of stuff. Now, here comes the $1 million, $1 trillion question. There'll be people sitting there going like, hang on a second, my HbA1c is 7.3, right? I'm not doing too badly, but I want a closed loop. Where do I go with it? Okay. So what I would say to them, there are lots of other things in the mix at the moment. So this is not just about nice. This is also about availability of certain technology, how we place it, how technologies innovate. So you've seen recent companies all moving together, which makes our life much more easier, if that makes sense. And companies have got that signal. So I think there's a lot of things to settle in place. So I would say to the whole community, don't worry. The idea is that we build a 5-year plan. That's the idea. And Libra took us, 5 years to get it to everybody? And Libra was simple, right? Libra is not tricky. Put it on. Here's a video. Off you go. So give us time. So the idea I have, and at least what we're working with NICE along with other members of the team, is that we build a very nice 5-year plan, which basically maps out year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And we say that's how we will do it. So that's the plan. But, we shall see how it plays out.
And do you think with the sort of criteria being imminent as such, are clinics already starting to upskill themselves? I know clinics already offer hybrid closed loops, so for them, I know it's an additional volume, but they've got a core there. But there's some clinics that don't at all.
Right.
So that's going to be handled. Will they send their patients to one of the experienced hospitals, or?
So here's what we have done, which has worked quite well behind the scenes, and I'll tell you everybody. So I think pediatric units are far more ready, right? They know it. They're doing it. They know it. Pediatric consultants and colleagues and nurse colleagues, they are dietetic colleagues. They're ahead of the curve, right? Many reasons for it, but wherever they are more ready. And you can see that in the pump uptake in children. It's about like 42, 44%, right? So you already have got those groups of people who are going to be switched on a loop, right? So in adults, I don't think everybody's ready, okay? So what we have done is to say to every region, there's 7 regions of England. And what I've said is that every region, I think there's 8 or 10 centers which are more ready than the others, okay? That doesn't mean I'm going to stop anybody else from doing it. I don't want them to do it, but I want them to come forward, which has already happened. Some centers have come forward and said, well, we think we can do it. Well, okay, right? But what I'm quite interested to see is when we put that out, how many people turn around and say, because, for example, there was a center which came along and said, we think we can do it. And our question to them was, how many pump patients do you have? And the answer is 2. And I'm going like, well, I'm not quite sure you're ready then, right? If you don't have experience in doing pumps, how will you do closed loops, right? So you need to have people, for example, people always say, oh, you always talk about Pratik and Emma and others. They're just your mates. Well, they're my mates because they believe in the same principle as me, which is upskill yourselves, get ready. They're not my mates because they come to my Christmas parties. They're my mates because we've got a similar ideology in life. So will they be the forerunners? Of course they will be. Will Portsmouth be a forerunner? Of course they will be. There's Ian Cranston there. So what we want to do is use a bit of that technique to sort of get people to galvanize themselves. You need to submit your data to the audit. Lots of adult centers have not submitted their pump data to. So when we're looking at numbers, we've got lots of centers which say there's 2 pumps, nil pumps. So if you're now coming and telling me, oh, I've got hundreds of pumps, I'll go, well, I don't have the evidence to back that. So to your question, I think what we'll do is we'll start with certain centers, but we would like a year 2, 3 for everybody to do it. Now, if somebody goes like, I am not doing it, which we have seen with pumps, I think there needs to be a debate as to whether they should do type 1 diabetes care, full stop, right? If in 2023, the question becomes, if you're going to say, I don't do technology, well, it's a bit like saying I do endocrinology. It's a bit like a neurosurgeon saying, well, I don't like doing pituitary surgery that way. Well, that's not an acceptable answer in today's modern day and age. Either train up or give your type 1 diabetes patient to somebody who will be better. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting because, and goes back as well to where you were saying about you put people on pumps first or not. So like the community will have held back to not go on a pump because it's just another form of delivering insulin.
Of course.
That takes a big chunk of time. Like it's like a slingshot. You have to pull right back before you can go forward with it. And it's hard.
Absolutely.
And if they're not getting it in clinic.
Yeah, and I think, again, you go back to the pump scenario, right? There are so many people who were qualified for the last pump thing, which is what always makes me slightly chuckle when people go like the HbA1c marker is too high in the last TA. And you go like, well, even by that one, not many people have ended up on it. So just bringing it down lower is not going to put more people on it.
This was my question was like with that TA 151, like there's 70,000 people who are eligible and have they not taken it up or have they not been offered it?
I can tell you from my own experience. You go around. I mean, you'll find loads of people who go like, what's a pump? Right? Or like, oh, pump. Nobody's actually had a conversation with them. So it depends. Let's take the example of education, right? Education, we all know, is important. Let's talk about Daphne. It's important. We want to do it. There's 2 ways you can sell Daphne to a person who comes along to see you. Number one option, you go and go like, oh, yeah, there's a program called Daphne. It'd be good if you do it. And the other one is, do you know what? This is the fundamental part of your type 1 diabetes care. I mean, I cannot recommend this highly enough. So it depends how you put it across, right? Similarly,
it's making it a choice. If you make it a choice, you choose not to.
Not only that, I think it's also about how big the healthcare professional backs it, how much they passionately believe, right? Yeah. So we have this when I was doing the sensor, when patients came along, if you go like, yeah, there's some technology, may work. Or you go like, oh my God, this is going to change your life. Give it a try. Honestly, give it a try and then come back and tell me how it is. Depends how you're putting it across. I think same will happen with closed loops. If you're a believer in it, right, then you will put it across to patients because, and I'll give you the simplest example I can give. I always use the analogy. What would I do if this was my child, right, or my loved one? And the answer is, that's what I would give. That's what you say to the patient. There's no 2 ways around it. There's none of the, oh my God, is it approved? Is there money? Well, I'm not paying out of my own pocket, am I? Right? If it's fun, if it's backed by NICE, and that's what I want to give to my loved one, that's what I give to a patient. That's how you sell it. So that's the philosophy. I would encourage anybody listening as a healthcare professional to put into their clinical life. It works well.
That's really interesting. And with your saying of maybe trying people on a straight pump, a standard pump first, one has the capability to loop, or would that tie somebody into 4 years before they could get?
Has to be pumps that loop.
Yes.
I mean, there's no question about it now. I mean, I think putting people on a non-loopable pump after the NICE comes out will be slightly silly, if I'm very honest. I mean, that just, as you said, that makes no sense unless you put them on a pump which is on an annual contract, right? Even then, I just think it's silly to do things like that. I mean, it's a bit like buying a smart TV but without the remote. I mean, what is the point of that, right? So I think that the pumps that we should offer people should have the option to upgrade if the person chooses or they're right and then blah, 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 all that. Similarly, I think that's the debate about the sensors, which is where it will go to eventually in due course, right? So, yeah.
That's really interesting. Are there any questions from the community that they've put in the chat? Because we're concentrating on talking and not reading the chat.
I'm not really reading the chat either.
Absolutely, there are questions coming through, and I think the conversation you guys are having it's phenomenal. It's very important. So let's have a look, shall we, and see what we can bring up. 1 second. You caught me off guard there, guys. Well done.
I saw what time it was, and I was
Here we
like,
go. Here we go. Which CGMs are going to be the main ones involved in hybrid closed loop management, Partha? As I use Libre 2 with Android APS, which is pretty good results. Dexcom G6, Libre 3, etc.
Yeah, so I think a lovely chart, which our colleagues in the DSN forum have built. I like that chart. That's really good. There you go, on cue. And I think that's really good, right? I think information is king, and I always say that. So you got Libre 2. There's lots of chatter about some pumps may link with Libre 2 in the future. Great, that would be a massive game changer if they did. But at the moment, to the question, the loopable ones, the Medtronic, obviously the one which has got their inbuilt loop. You will have the Dexcom G6 further on to the G7. And of course, you'll have Libre 3. So those are the three big shot options on the table at the present moment of time. So options. We're in a land of plenty at the moment. You can see how much this is all accelerated, isn't it? So it's great to see all the companies matching up with people.
And that's what I think it's all about. And that's what we like as people living with diabetes, or parents or carers, or healthcare professionals like you, is providing options on the table, isn't it? So we can make, hopefully, the decisions that will help with our diabetes, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether you've got a question on the cost effectiveness side later on. Otherwise, I'll answer this. Do you have a question? So I'll answer that differently then. I'll leave that for now.
Well, no, we had one in reserve that affordability was mentioned in the NICE draft.
Yep.
And just wondering if companies have agreed to an affordable price for the NHS, or is that still in negotiation? Or
yes
have some and some haven't?
Yes and no. So I think I'll start with being fair on the companies, because they haven't been revealed the actual cut price to say that this is our price. There's lots of indications, lots of chatter floating around. And I think what companies are doing, they're feeling their way around, if I'm honest, because they know very well, most of them know that the existing price is probably a little bit high or may not fit in. So they're doing the maneuvering. You've seen recent moves happening from Ipsomed, making their play and saying that, we want the low price HCL and got Cambridge APX and all that. It's very encouraging. All I can say is that, without breaching any confidentiality, is that it looks good. It looks good. There obviously will be people. And I think, I'm sure there's some companies sitting around listening to this, which is good. So I'm looking at you guys and saying that, we need to make this happen. I think all of you, we're not going to ask you silly prices, because we know you've got a business to run. But I think what I would say is that if there are 4 or 5 options on the table, right, and 3 or 4 come under the radar, it would be silly for one of you to stay above the radar. That's the only massive tip I would give you, because then it won't be the fault of NHS England or NICE, if I'm very honest. I think then you need to think about what you are saying for your, about, is it business for you? Is it about patient? Because I think if everybody stays above, then probably our cost lines are a bit too tight for other industry to play in this country. I don't think it's, if I'm honest. Because we are fully appreciative, and we have done this dance before. People forget we've done this with Libre, right? We've done this with Dexcom, with pregnancy. There's no reason we can't do it in the closed loop space. So for those who are listening, so once we come to the table with the price, think about it. Think about the business you can do in other countries from what you can achieve here, right? My appeal to everybody would be, consider that, because I think the type 1 diabetes community is also looking at all of you back here, because, industry and we work together. So that would be my encouragement. So, but to your question, I am pretty confident we'll get there.
And is your expectation, this is my own supplementary question, that any clinics that offer hybrid closed loop will offer a choice of hybrid closed loop?
Oh, everybody
will offer everything. So it's not, I go to this hospital, I can have these. I go to that hospital.
That's the lesson we must learn from the pump debacle that we have had. As I said, 15 years was the last TA. Come on. I mean, that's the worst delivery of a NICE guideline you will ever see in the history of time, right? So, I mean, look at what we have done with the NG1718 of, Libra and CGM, 9 out of 10. We need to do that with the next TA that comes from this one. So I would very much say, and we are very much in tune, that the option, so if you come to my clinic and you want a loop, you should have all the options and all the companies which agree to the price should be there on the table for you, right? And that's what it should be.
What's the difference for people between technology appraisal and guidance, Partha? Because we all know NICE, we all hear NICE bandied around, and this is a different conversation. And it was technology appraisal before, and it didn't all translate.
Yeah, so we can talk about this till the cows go home. But anyway, so let me tell you why technology appraisals don't work and what they are. So there are 3 things that NICE produces, right? One is called an MIB, right? And an MIB is a bit like, well, nothing, not worth. It just says, hey, listen, this is Libra. It's like a white disc. Checks your glucose. Best of luck, right? So nobody's got any obligation to do that. Then the next step above is your NGs, your guidance. That's what we have. It's got a degree of power around it, not legally enforceable, though there's a lot of debate as to whether there are some cases. So if you really took anybody to court, you probably will win, right? Because there's actually precedents of people taking NICE guidelines to court and winning the battle. So that's a different debate. We don't need to do that because we've done the NG1718 in type 1. Fine. Then you come to TAs, which are legally mandated. So the NHS has to fund it, okay? So whenever people go to me and go like, but pumps, and you go like, well, if you qualify, you get it. So many of the reasons, so in fairness to the commissioners, but there are lots of TAs which are implemented, rheumatology, heart, other cares, oncology. We in the diabetes world never pushed hard for it. So I think one of the things that I want to pass on to my colleagues, because my time at some point will come to an end, is that you have to keep the pressure on as a policymaker on systems. You have to, accountability is important. If you don't have accountability, you can't even enforce legal things. And that's what we learned. That's the difference between the implementation of what has gone in the past and what we've been able to do. So that's the answer to your question. The TA is legally enforceable. You cannot make rules up and go like, oh, well, sorry about that. You can be taken to court, the NHS. So the NHS has got a legal responsibility to do that. That's the power of it. Now, how people use it is a different debate altogether.
Is it something, though, the community could use if they're eligible and it comes through?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is what I keep on saying, is that the community has found its voice. Why is type 1 diabetes care has this moved? Because the community has a voice. That's fantastic. Which is why we have just finished this peer support work, and we're just going to publish a map, right, next week, as you will see, broken down into postcodes throughout England, all the peer support groups, right? Everywhere, all throughout England. I want people to know where they exist. Because I want peer support groups to tell everybody, are you on something? Are you on this? Why are you not? Did you know the rules are? I want people to do that. Because I can push as much as from, internally and all that. But it needs the community to so to your question, Mary, if it's and you qualify, yes.
Can I follow up with this question then? What's your thoughts on people who are using DIY closed loop? And you talk about community and the power of the voice. This is a big movement, I guess, in the direction of where we're getting with hybrid closed looping, right? Without the community.
When you were little and not in this community, there was this thing called Rise of the Machines, which I started. Now
we were there before that.
Where's this chap? Right. So I'm a big believer in DIY closed loop, right? Let's be very, very honest. It's because of the work in the DIY closed loop communities, because industry have now all got their act in gear and falling over each other to create loops.
Yep.
If that community didn't do that work, led by Dana and everybody else, it's phenomenal. So those of you will remember the first time we did this Rise of the Machines, and I did that, and I was under a lot of criticism for bringing DIY. We flew Dana over, and it was brilliant. She sort of came over and talked around us. And that was probably put the seed in my head as to about why can't we force it. So my view, I've got patients in DIY closed loops. I've got a very simple thing. It seems to be working, crack on, right? The issue is with legality as to how you put it into the modern system, because industry obviously, have their issues with it, understandably so. It's a bit like, as I always say, there's a car you buy from a garage, which is fantastic. And there's a car you soup up and drive, which is also fantastic. So that's the way I look at it. They're both amazing cars. And whatever car drives for you, keep on driving it.
I like it. I like it.
And can I jump in on another bit on that then? Because those of us that are on DIY and with good stats, but want to move off DIY because it's technology and all the things there are all the things when you've got them commercially. Yeah. But when you're building them yourselves, it is an extra thing. And,
of course it is. Yeah. So what's your question? Can you get to a commercial closed loop if you want to?
Is there anything being talked about how that bridge could be made, or are we still going to end up stuck on DIY?
No. If you want to go to a commercial loop, I'm sure we can make the case. I mean, my view is that if somebody is stuck on a DIY closed loop, do you want to really fancy a closed loop, normal closed loop, but my control is so good, am I ever going to get it? I think for me, you should qualify as a closed loop, full stop, right? It's the principle, right? So don't forget that what we are doing is we are not measuring any system, are we? We're measuring hybrid closed loop. We're not measuring Medtronic, which we did in the past. If you look at past ones, the only one we had is Medtronic 640. We're not measuring Ipsomed. We're measuring the principle, right?
Yes, okay.
So are you saying in the draft, there was a part that if you're already on a hybrid closed loop, then you would continue?
I would like to make that adjustment, if you ask me. I don't think NICE can make it, but in policy role, we probably can. So I'm going to have a think about that. But I would strongly favor it. There are lots of people in DIY who don't want to move, right? Because their control is probably going to be better than commercial closed, right? Some of the DIY data is way ahead of commercial ones. That's fact. So they may not want to move. But if they want to move, and I think, as Mary said, you're like, oh, God, can't do all the things I really would like to move something, give me a little bit of breathing.
I'm one of those who jumped, but I jumped because I knew the appraisal was coming up and I might not qualify.
No, I think it would be unfair. Let's put it this way. If you were my patient, I would certainly make the case to say that a loop is a loop is a loop.
Brilliant. That makes that so clear. And I think it wasn't clear in my head, but I like the ambiguity of the wording. So it's inclusive. There's
a lot of tactics behind every single word I put out, because it needs to be. So I think it's important. I think that's what I say in the policy role. So let me give you one example. When we first put out the the Libra guidance, we had a lot of criticism. What is these criteria? People forgot there was a fantastic criteria in there, which lots of specialists used to their advantage. It was a very simple criteria. If you feel diabetes is very burdensome for their living, they can have a Libra. Well, in my clinic, that's pretty much everybody, right? But not everybody used it. Some people said, I think they need to be assessed by a psychologist before they can get it. And I'm going, do you have a psychologist? No. I said, well, okay. Well, it depends as to how you want to read the rule books. So I think hybrid closed loops, it never says commercial. It never says particular products. It talks about principles.
Awesome.
That's the important bit.
We've got a question from Richard about, well, I suppose it is a question, does the insulin you use make a difference? So it's which is the preferred fast-acting insulin for the hybrid closed-loop systems?
So,
has that improved time in range and quality of life, etc., depending on the insulin?
I am very equivocal on it, if I'm very honest, because I think they are very marginal differences. I know people will come and say, here is the data, what is that? My personal experience, albeit anecdotal, is that I don't think it's the game changer out there. You're going to put that insulin and suddenly everything gets phenomenally better. Your time range goes up by 20%. No.
Yeah.
There are marginal differences, as there are between all the commercial. Because if you genuinely sit down and look at, for example, just the loops, take out the insulin for a bit, just the loops, isn't like a big gap between them all, is there? It then boils down to your personal preference and size and tubes and all sorts of stuff. So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's just a little tiny bit earlier like where you pre-bolus.
Yeah, the
That's what
faster
it
the better.
Yeah. So Norman has, speaking of nice, do you think realistically that hybrid closed loop will be available for all type 1s one day?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I mean, I think, those of you who are here, I mean, I had this question in 2019. It's pretty much the same one. Do you think realistically Libra will be available for all type 1 one day? Yes, it is now, right? It will. And I think there's two things that will make it happen. One is the further data. More and more it comes out. I think what you'll see, type 1 diabetes, unless the cure comes out, the mythical cure, right? This is the next best thing, right? What else is out there? This is the next best thing. So there's some fantastic trials going on. There's all the sort of, stem cell trials. They're all years away. That's the reality. Okay. So this is the hybrid closed loop. There will come the actual closed loop. That's probably the next step and probably the last step before you go anywhere else. So I reckon what will happen, type 1 diabetes will be only 2 steps. Step 1, you get an insulin and a sensor on diagnosis. And if you do well, you do well. And if you go like, this is not for me, they'll end up going on a loop. I think that's it. I don't think anything else will sit in between. So to Norman, I think that will take us another 4 or 5 years. But I think a lot of it will be also tied in with pricing. And pricing will drop the more competition comes to the market. We already see that, right? You can see that. And that's fantastic. And the more people come into play, the more your pricing will change. It's the basics of economics.
Yeah. Supply and demand.
Yeah. Doing that. I've got another question. I think we've sort of covered it, but we can re-go over it.
I will answer, Lauren. Lauren is asking, timeline for closed loops. In short, 24th of May, we have a meeting to discuss and finalize the final thing. Hopefully end of June, beginning of July, it will then come out. Then it's open for people to, as I said, a bit like the wedding, forever hold your peace, which is out there for if anybody wants to legally challenge it. If there's a legal challenge from industry, then we obviously are stuck. I pull our fingers across that our industry colleagues work with us. In fairness to industry colleagues, we haven't had any problems so far in the journey we've had with tech. I mean, that's the real honest answer. So I don't want to make them into some sort of villain character there, but industry will have their views. And then after that, the rollout, if all stays to plan, we hopefully from October. So that's the timeline.
Yes. I know it is quite exciting in seeing what happens. And I think, like you say, the more people and the more it starts being used, it's going to get its own momentum and we'll go that way.
We've had a comment through, Partha, just wondering what your thoughts on it. We're talking about pumps and before. Yeah. So Mark says, can centers stop threatening to take people off pumps if they're using DIY closed loops? What's your thoughts on that?
So the answer is, I think that's why we pick the centers who are populated with people who don't do things like that, right? Would you expect Pratik to do that? No. Would I expect Emma to do that? 100% no. So why do you think these centers are being picked? So that they're not populated by people who go like, I'm going to take your pump off, right? So that's what I said is the cascading plan that we have. I want people to step forward that they want to do it with the right ethos. I don't want people to sort of say, oh, well, I don't do closed loop because of this and that. Well, either do it properly or don't do it. So I think, so the next comment about me getting the whip out and other centers, I think I've done that for 5-6 years, right? It's incredibly tiring to always challenge people. It's a singular battle because people, I think it's a very English thing. People are afraid to challenge. I think people find it. But as I always say, is that your collaboration, which is what people keep on saying, we need to collaborate together. Collaboration should not become collusion. And that's my only advice I give to people all the time. So, yeah. So I probably won't be around all the time to crack the whip, but I think public accountability needs to come from patients now. So I think...
Yeah, and you see the diabetes tech can't wait campaign, like that's going on in Scotland and coming south of the border as well, and it's so strong. And the more we get behind that too, then it comes
have
from
a
the bottom
voice.
up.
You have a very strong voice, and I think I keep on saying that you have a very strong, even though it sometimes feels like some days you're shouting in the blinking ether. There is strength in numbers. Always remember that. There's strength in numbers, strength in what you say. And you're not asking for something that isn't evidence-based, are you? You're not going out and saying, you're asking for what NICE has said.
Yeah.
So NICE are an internationally recognized body, does cost effect. And if they're saying these people should get it, and you're in that group, you should get it. So it's as straightforward as that.
And I know I'm not putting words into your mouth, but I'm saying them on my point. You have a right to change clinic if you have a reason for, and that
110%.
Go to your GP. I mean, you can ask and try in your own clinic, but at some point,
110%. I would actually say to people that is absolutely right. I always say this: you need to be seen by somebody who's giving you everything you need to live your life better. End of story, right? It's not about making, will they feel annoyed with me? That's not the relationship which is healthy in any way for your diabetes care, right? You haven't turned up there to be their friend. You've turned up there because you are in need of help due to a condition which is nothing you have done to bring it upon yourself. So if you're not happy with what you're getting, you move on to somebody who will give you that. That's quite straightforward.
Yeah, Michelle had a question. She said, and it kind of was in my head as well, like what can we do to help the
you do plenty. You guys do amazing. I mean, you are the strength. I mean, how do you think I go and challenge people and speak so publicly? It's because what you guys, the support I have behind you, at the whole of NHS England, the whole of the system knows, the strength of the patient community. So whoever comes after me, lend him or her everything that you guys have.
And do you think with like taking the centres that are already gearing up and rolling out with them, and everybody else watching, like and every other clinic watching, but every other member of the community watching in those other clinics?
Yeah.
What's the strongest thing that they can do? We talked about like moving clinics, but like, is that the strongest thing?
Oh, you can. Okay, strength in numbers. If you've got peer support groups, right?
Yes.
You can absolutely meet with the exec team. Why not? Why not? Right? They're all public servants. I'm what am I? When people always go, "Oh my God, you're doing amazing work." I get paid to do this. That's my role. The taxpayers pay me to do this job, right? So are they all. So you can absolutely ask, and I think that's what individually it's scary. Together, it isn't.
And that is where peer support is brilliant. And
100%.
even if you can't get an insulin pump in your clinic, you can set up a peer support group or join a peer support group and build the voice there, the local voice.
100%. I encourage people to do that. It's your life. Why won't you ask for something that is approved? If you're asking for things which are not approved, I can understand that, but you're not. Once the TA comes out, there will be certain criteria. Okay, we'll start with that, support everybody who should get it. And then you move on to why not everybody else? What's the data? How do you collect it? So we would want to ask NICE to review the data, whatever the criteria is in 2 years, to see how do we extend it further. That's the way it should work.
Will that work? Will that be the case then?
Of course. That's what I'm going to ask them.
Okay.
I think the peer support part is really important. I organise a local peer support group, and I know some of the doctors, I don't know if all of them, but I definitely know one or two. If somebody's a bit sort of undecided, not sure about a pump being attached, send them along to, you just sort of say, go and talk to these people. Some of them wear pumps, we don't all.
Yep.
But it's just that reassurance as well, because 100%. It's scary. And I know when I first started, I started DIYing, but to start with, oh my God, was I paranoid and looking at that. My phone was like, oh my God, what's it doing now? And it's that reassurance to trust things. So I think the introduction of peer support will be very important to support people, necessarily with the technicalities of it, but actually coping and living with it and trusting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Peer support. I mean, for me, I've always said, I've said this so many times. I've always said 3 planks to improve type 1 diabetes management: self-management with technology and education, peer support, and access to a really good healthcare professional. That's it. You have the trio, your diabetes care is good. It's, and which one you pick. So that's the golden trio of good type 1 diabetes care.
Okay,
oh, sorry, go, Mary.
I was going to read James's question there.
Yes.
Yeah. So James has, do you think ICBs will be resistant to this like they have been with Libra and Dexcom 1?
Yes and no. I think the no is because they are aware it's a TA. They are aware of the legal position of it, and they're aware of what can happen if they refuse. So they can't refuse. They will sort of say that we got plans, etc., and sort of, that's. And also yes, because they are under a severe financial crunch, right? They're having to balance out everything. So what I always say to us, we are looking at the financial modeling, how to sort of help, what we can do to help. How do we do it, gradually, the 5-year plan. So those are all things we are considering at the moment with the finances, because, we don't want just to go to say to ICBs, hallelujah, now just fund it. Because at the end of it, they're also having to fund about 75 million things at the same time. And we appreciate that. So we've got some plans in place. Let's see how it all plays out. So we're going to try and make it, as smooth, as feasible in this present climate.
You did mention earlier, I'm bringing in my own question here, about the pregnancy, and is it still being decided how that is handled for people who are pregnant and how long they keep it, or hopefully they just keep it, rather than, because I think listening to the community, sometimes post having the baby, that a lot of the support quickly withdraw. So you've had like weekly clinics and scans and this, and then you have a baby.
Okay,
and
so I cannot see how
all of a sudden it's like you're on your own now, folks.
See, okay, so morally, I personally find it incredibly challenging to walk up to a woman and go like, you know that thing that really helped your diabetes care? I'm not going to take it off you. Best of luck. Morally, I would personally struggle. I can tell you that right now. Okay. But beyond that, let's see where things play out. I think there will be a degree of variation around it. And I think that will get embroiled in a lot of controversy. People want to take things off a woman. So let's see. I personally am not a big fan. I think that's what I've asked for clarification. I think people need to make it clear what it is. And if NICE don't make the decision, maybe I'll have to make the decision. Who knows? That should be fun.
I know, because it's really hard with a newborn baby and with a toddler. And
I'm not disputing that at all.
And it's also at a time that you're probably not up for fighting either. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. You don't
just need to get through the day.
I hear you, ladies. I hear you. It's okay.
If you've had a shower, you're doing well.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Mary,
say,
I've got it.
if you're not in pajamas, wow.
I've got it.
Right. So Tess Singh says, if I am interested in a specific pump that my diabetes team does not offer, what would I do? Should I wait or be asked to be transferred?
So the plan is that when we roll this out, that every area, because of the procurements and things that we are doing, that all areas will have options of all the pumps. So it's impossible for people to say, I don't do the pump. I don't have the pump. They might say, I'm not trained in it, which is a different debate altogether. In which case we would say, please go and train yourself up because those pumps are here. But the idea is very simple, that we have a national procurement where every single option is available on the table. So nobody should be able to say, I don't have a pump. Those are the days we want to leave behind.
That's good. So in that case, would you say it might be worth just waiting a little bit till the new...
I think you should raise it with us. If somebody goes, oh, we don't have a pump, maybe they're just not informed about the area signed up. Maybe it's a question of them not being trained. So I think you need to then peel it apart a little bit and say, well, is it? And they go, oh, actually, I don't know much about that pump. And you go, like, well, go and learn about that pump then, right?
Yeah, push for it.
Push for it.
And do you think some of the smaller clinics will be able to cope with that? Because I do appreciate some of the clinics are quite small. And if, say, there's 4 or 5 systems, that might be a lot if you've only maybe got one DSN or something.
100%. Absolutely. So I think that's the thing. So we do realize is that as it escalates the rollouts, we will need a workforce extra added on. Either that or we have to stop doing something else in diabetes. That's the reality. This is not Libra, where Libra, I was very clear about, come on, guys. What do you mean you need 3 psychologists to start a Libra? You just making no sense. Or as one trust said to me, they needed 2 pharmacists to start Libra, and I went like, well, that's just silly. But this is different. This is a different ball game. You will need administrators to do a lot of the work. You will need what I would like to call them diabetes technicians, whether that's a specialist nurse, a dietitian, or whatever. But this will need workforce as we escalate. I think the first year we may not need it, depending on if they're on pumps and all that. But I think as it moves on, it will need it. There's no question.
Mm. And have you any thoughts on how that support will be there? Will it be the model that at the moment that it's trained DSNs? Will it be that we introduce some sort of, like in the States and other countries, they have educators who aren't fully qualified?
Yeah.
But
I like those models. I do like. That's why I call them diabetes technicians. So you wrap up. It isn't just limited to one staff grade.
Mm-hmm.
You can move around. It could be a dietitian. It could be a pharmacist. It could be anybody who's trained up to do that role. Is trained up to do that role. I think that's the way it will probably go.
Okay. Right. And now we've got one here. I think we're all reading it at the same time.
No, it's a lot.
Basically, if they don't qualify for closed loop, can they be moved on to a compatible
sensors? Yeah.
Watch this space is what I would say. We've got some things in the fire. We're working on a few things. Let's see. I mean, that would be lovely if we can do that. But there are some price negotiations going on, some discussions going on, lots of things in play at the moment. But yes, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
That's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're aware of all that. I mean, there are lots of moving plates at the moment. Companies are all coming out with different things. So there's lots and lots of moving plates at the moment. And where we put it, do we put it on prescription? Do we leave it on procurement? Do we leave it just for loops? Do we do it? There's lots of things at the moment, moving plates.
I have just one quick question that sprung, and Tom's going to be annoyed at me for asking it because of time, not because I'm asking it. If somebody gets a pump that is potentially a loopable pump, but they're not funded by their local clinic because they don't fit the criteria, but they say, oh, I'll self-fund the sensors, etc. Is that a model that clinics could be okay switching on the loop, or is it seen as them jumping the queue? Because it is in a way.
I suspect it depends on how the NHS will see it. Will it see it as a sunk cost in the sense, well, the only cost is a pump? They would have got it anyway. Then the NHS, if it looks at it from a financial point of view, it will be fine. I think the jumping the queue is a question. So I think we need to be careful about that we don't just sort of, accelerate that, bake in that whole divide that we have. I mean, it will be interesting. I think there won't be any obvious narrative on that. There'll be more about, I think, local places, the relationship you have, and going with that.
Yeah, this kind of resonates back over here in Northern Ireland because of the advanced CGM or the lack of the advanced CGM, and we're doing that already. So.
What a fascinating discussion, guys. 2 final questions, and we'll kind of put these together. Where do you see the future for hybrid closed loop? You mentioned also about just having closed loop itself rather than a hybrid bit before. And the last question from Norman as well. Fun question for you, Partha. If you can imagine anything to be available for T1Ds, money no issue, what would it be?
That's simple. Genuinely the cure. I mean, I've always said that, right? Genuinely, it will change lives. It will change futures. And I think, and I don't say it glibly. So recently we have just been signing off some research, which is going, it will just, it is what it is, Lots of people, there will be lots of debate. Oh, do people lose their identity if they don't have their type 1 anymore and all that? Vast majority would be, oh, I've had that.
I missed it.
I've had patients who have been very, very not happy when we have spoken about their diabetes may not be type 1. But yeah, I mean, if money was no objective, if there was a magic wand, I would wish a cure. And I don't say that glibly. I mean, it's I see that from every day. I've always said it's a daily battle. It's very different. I mean, I deal with so many other conditions, right? Endocrinology, general medicine, this and that. It's just such a.
You'd be out of a job, Partha.
No, me. You must be joking. I'll find something, and there's plenty of it. But no, I think that would be amazing if it happened.
Yeah,
I think.
Do you think it could?
Yeah,
like the next 100 years.
I think we'll be earlier than that. I think there is, you forgetting all the conspiracy theories for a bit. There is some really exciting research in the pipeline right now. If one of them hits, then you're in play. and then you're really in play. So, I think the ones that you're talking about delaying it, there are lots and lots of work going on. So, that should be quite fun to see how it all plays out.
Absolutely. And look, there you go. Partha can never be out of a job. He's awesome. Indeed. So what I want to do before we finish our event, I want to bring up this screen here, guys. And we've had so many questions on the community tonight. So thank you to everyone that joined in with all your questions and comments. But I just wanted to share these with Partha and then see if there's any sort of final thoughts or comments that he wanted to bring up. We did a I know. Should I make it bigger for everyone?
No, it's fine. I've got my glasses on now.
There we go. So we did a poll this week just to see what people are using. So it's quite interesting. It is quite split, really. So let's move on. And then we had a few sort of comments coming through. Simon said he was interested in hybrid closed loop. Not sure how it would work with some insulin resistance. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a question of whether it's sort of, we mix it up, in a patient like that, would you try different other drugs in the middle to try and help counter the insulin resistance? You never know. It's not really a field that lots of people have experience in. Do I have patients who are on pumps with whom I've given other products like GLP-1 and metformin? Yes, there are. So maybe, who knows?
Who knows? Alison says she's on the Omnipod Dash. She's keen to know if hybrid closed loop will be able to cope with huge variations at work, times of stress, menopausal changes. How will that work?
I always say to people, every individual is different. Your hormonal variations, your times of stress, every single thing you mention are different from human being to human being, right? And if you want to find out the answer, the only one way to find out is to go on it and see how it works for you. That's my honest answer. And I think we need to stop the narrative that there's only one way of doing it. You might go on it and it might change your life. And you might go on it and go like, this was horrible. Thanks very much. I'm back on my insulin. Find out.
And I think something else might work.
Yeah, I was going to say, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
And like using a closed loop, some of the things, you can switch profiles at certain times. You can, there's different ways. If you speak to the community, there's lots of ways of handling the same problem.
So true. So very true. Indeed.
We had a comment from Leslie there. What about with Scotland? Is it different of how they bring in closed loop in?
No, we've had a lot. We are in contact with our Scottish counterparts. We have had meetings, we've had chats and stuff. I think they're also battling with the same thing as us: the money, where it comes, how it sits, training issues the same. So So keep your eyes open. You've got some good leaders in there as well. So I think they are battling a lot of politics to get this through. So fingers crossed.
Catherine there, I'm squinting my eyes now. I'm on the T-Slim and Dexcom. It's been a rocky road for me with it. I'm still getting used to it. It's learning to trust the hybrid closed loop. And that's the point I wanted to raise with you, really, is it's like you input your carbs and what you've eaten, but it's kind of then allowing it to do it for yourself. And you guys will hear soon Yasmin's thoughts of using it for herself. And I guess it is, isn't it? It's trying to build that trust with that.
Absolutely. It's a new thing. You've got to try it out, see how it plays out for you, and then go from there.
Super. And then just some sort of final comments. You can see people's time and range has increased. So that's good. Ian says,
what I would say to everybody, I've said this before, right? Time and range is a great thing, okay? But don't get fixated by it.
Yeah.
I always say to people, 60%. I always say to my people, doing great. A bit more work, great. 70% amazing, 80% out of the world, 90% don't come and see me ever, please. Right? You're doing, that's just stop it. What on earth is going on? So, don't put too much pressure on you. I see so many people who try to get to the 90s and have destroyed their lives trying to do that. Don't forget that the incremental benefits after 70%, or according to data, and Pratik and others talks about it, really levels off. So, don't try and do something which is, don't destroy your life trying to sort of hit numbers, is what I would say. Think about the longer term impact.
Absolutely. Fiona obviously mentions the Omnipod. Do you believe we will see more tubeless?
I have seen tubeless prototypes from most companies. They're all coming. So that's the natural progression. I think they will come.
Brilliant stuff. Mary, Philippa, was there any final questions you wanted to ask to Partha?
You know me. Just one. With the draft that was going through, there was no mention of the mental health side of having diabetes. That was sort of totally there. Are there thoughts of bringing that in? So I'm not saying it's a cure-all for that, but it could take a lot of the burden off for people.
Yeah, no. So we have raised again. It's in the feedback from lots of people. So we'll see how they take into account. I think is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Nobody knows. That's the problem, right? So I think, for me personally, if somebody's got a massive mental health issue, apart from the support and everything, I tend to sort of go gentle with the sensors, show them the numbers, see what a pump can do, and I think it's about working a way through. So can closed loop will be great for them. It can be, but once they've got through the first few phases of the technology before you loop it up, that's the way I would probably look at it, because otherwise it can become too overbearing. But again, let's see what NICE says on that.
And can I ask for us outside of NHS England?
Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland.
Lovely place.
Gorgeous.
Love it.
Gorgeous.
Why haven't you invited me up there, Mary?
To bring you over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Perfect.
We'll do that. Yeah, because we've got, we've a lot to do still. We need a government. We need a government.
That's why you asked me. I know you guys quite well. We'll sit down. We can have a chat. We can meet your government. It's not a problem. Why not?
Have to find the government first, Mary.
That's right.
Technicality.
Yeah.
there's voting here on next Thursday. So
well, let me know. I'm always happy to help. And just to give you an idea, so at the moment we are helping in other countries. So I've been in negotiations with South Africa, India, trying to help some of their local policies and stuff, talking about cost effectiveness, talking about the way we've done it, nice calculations. Politicians do listen. So always happy to help. It's not a problem.
Thank you.
And Partha, was there any final comments or anything you wanted to mention, or is there anything we haven't covered in this?
Listen, guys. I have had the greatest fun doing this role for 7 years. I've always said this is the last ace in the deck, right? And if we can land this, will be amazing. And I every opportunity I get, I'm eternally grateful for the support you guys continue to give me. So it's the power that pushes it through. So as I said, let's get this over the line, and whoever comes after me, please extend your love and support as you've done to me to the other person, because they will definitely need that. So I have nothing to say. Sorry, yes. Go.
I have another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Were you as vocal before this in other roles?
Always. You should have seen I was clinical director of Portsmouth. You should come around and ask a lot of the management team in Portsmouth. It's written in legend, my battles for X and Y.
I love it.
Yeah. No point in keeping quiet. If you think you're on the side of right, you've got to raise your voice. I always believe in this. People will tell you always, you shouldn't say things loudly because you need to collaborate. And I keep on saying one thing: collaboration is not a synonym for collusion. Very different.
Well, thank you, Partha, for your time today. It's been such a fascinating chat for our community. I hope that we've answered all your questions, guys, or some of them, on hybrid closed looping. It's been really good, hasn't it, Mary and Philippa, getting a little bit more insight into the future of technology and management and care for us, guys. So yeah, really exciting, and thank you so much, Partha, for your time today.
Pleasure, guys. Thank you so much. I'll take my leave, and lovely to see you all. And we'll catch up again sometime, somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Partha. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So, guys, what we're going to do now is we're going to hear from Yasmin Hopkins, who Mary and Philippa, it was such a tremendous chat catching up with Yasmin a couple of weeks ago. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of tea, and you'll get to know a little bit more about Yasmin. We do our 90-second questions with her, and then we ask some very important questions on hybrid closed loop and the impacts it's had on her and her quality of life. So sit back, enjoy, and we'll catch you on the other side in about 10-15 minutes. All right. So now on our diabetes chat stories, today we're talking about hybrid closed loop systems, and we're joined by Yasmin. Hello, Yasmin.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely great to have you here. So we're going to start with some sort of quick fire questions, if that's okay with you, in our
Yeah.
90-second feature. Okay, let's kick off. What is your name?
Yasmin, that was an easy one.
That was an easy one. When were you diagnosed with diabetes, and how old were you?
Ooh, it was about 17 years ago and I was 11.
Do you finger prick or use smart technology?
I am smart tech all the way.
All the way.
All the way.
If and when you finger pricked back in the day, did you change the lancets every day?
No, absolutely not. No. Did anyone, by the way?
I don't think so. I think they've still got that original box. Do you use insulin pens or pump, and what do you prefer and why?
I am a pump user. However, I use both depending on where I'm at and what I do. But I am pumped through and through, really. But holidays, pens.
Great tip there, guys. Are you hypo aware?
I am.
What symptoms do you have of hypos?
Oh God, shaky, sweating, kind of the internal, I'm gonna burst kind of feeling, dizzy. However, I have started to get a new symptom, which is like little black dots in my eyes almost.
Okay.
At first I thought, oh my gosh, is this retinopathy?
Yeah.
But no, it was a hypo symptom, so that's a new one for me in the past
New
year.
one. Yeah, I've not heard that before. Great tip, and keep an eye out for it, guys.
Yeah.
What do you think's worse, feeling hypo or feeling hyper?
Oh, I'm gonna say hyper because I feel really sick.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing you like about diabetes and one thing you don't like about diabetes.
I love our community, our
Yep.
people. I always, when I speak and talk about diabetes, I say us and we, and I think we have a fantastic support group in anyone with diabetes. What I hate the most is the pressures it puts on my family and my boyfriend in particular, things like that. That kind of, yeah.
I can totally understand that. And do you love or hate the smell of insulin?
Honestly, I think I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
I don't really care for it, but I wouldn't get it in my perfume.
There you go. I won't get you that for Christmas then.
Thank you.
So there we go, guys. Our 90-second quickfire questions with Yasmin. Thank you, Yasmin. So now, Yasmin, we've got some questions for you, and you're going to share your lived experiences of hybrid closed loop. And our first question for you is, how long have you been using hybrid closed loop, and how did you hear about it, and why did you move over to hybrid closed loop?
Yeah, so first of all, I was part of the NICE Guidance pilot study, which was an absolute privilege and honour to be a part of. And to be honest, I have a fantastic diabetes team, and I didn't realise how varied secondary care was across the country until I really started talking to people. But my team in particular, back in Dorset, where I'm originally from, they've got a Facebook page, and they're all like, the consultants are on it and the patients are on it, and it's just brilliant. And a message popped up saying, oh, we're trialing some new technology, and I thought, I know what that is. And unfortunately, I've suffered with quite a high HbA1c for years, regardless of being on pumps, MDI, changing insulin, everything. I've got quite a unfortunate medical history, nothing to do with my diabetes. So all of those diseases unfortunately affect my blood sugars. And I thought, you know what? This system could finally be that bridge that takes the pressure off a bit. So that was the main kind of thing for me, because I was already on a pump, but I didn't obviously have the connectivity. My nanny, before she passed away, she actually funded my Libra as well. So I was also very kind of aware of using CGMs, which 2 years ago when I started this wasn't the norm as it is now. Fortunately, thank you everyone, NHS England involved in that. So yeah, for me, as soon as I saw it, I thought this really could be that final step for me to get that control that I've worked so hard for, but my HbA1c was still above 100.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more then about the actual hybrid closed loop in itself, and what features do you like the most about it, and how has using the technology really helped improve your sort of quality of life, mental health? How have you seen any differences in your overall management and control of your day-to-day diabetes?
Yeah, so I saw a stat, and it said 40 to 50% of type 1s suffer from diabetes distress. And to be honest with you, I think I disagreed with it. I think I thought, well, who are these people? Because first of all, I don't think I know anyone that hasn't suffered from diabetes distress. And something that is incorporated in that, and I'm sure you also are aware, is the 180 healthcare related decisions a day, which we've chatted before. Like, you can say, oh, well, I'm running a bit high today, so actually, you know what, I'm not going to eat. Those are healthcare decisions related to our diabetes that to us we probably don't think about, but actually they're quite serious. So the closed loop in no way is a magic pill. It is not an artificial pancreas. You still need to do things, but it can alleviate some of those healthcare decisions. And one thing in the question, it says the difference in your overall management. And I want to pick up on that, because for me, my system, the Tandem T Slim with G6, is perfect. Once I hit 12, it then corrects for me. I don't do a thing. It does it all for me. And it predicts 30 minutes into the future what my blood sugar will be. So it just adds that little bit of correction dose. And I carry on. I don't even do anything. Now, for some people, it may get to 12 and they're thinking, that's way too high. I'm not one of those people. I don't mind to run around 10, to be honest with you. We know that now the average non-diabetic patient will have 70% time in range. So if you do get to 10 or 12, I think it's really important we kind of change that narrative that is okay.
That is okay.
Yeah. And the hybrid closed loop, I think people think, oh, I'm going to be 100% time in range. It's not for that reason.
No.
It's to get you, it mimics the natural process and things like that, really. So yeah, for me, that's the difference. Is I was going high, whatever I did, everything high, high, high. But like I say, I now hit that 12, just corrects for me. Now, don't get me wrong. After the month, I had a honeymoon period and thought, this is the most amazing thing ever. And then all of a sudden, so at the time it was 15, 16 years of diabetes, I was like, this machine is doing my job that I've done for over 15 years. And I think that's really important that people, people need to know, though, it's also very hard to let it do its thing. Because all of a sudden I found myself kind of saying, well, actually, no, I want that correction a bit earlier. And I was overriding it, and that just caused chaos. So I think it's a huge lesson that people should realize, is that you need to change your mindset and your narrative and be ready to run at 12. You still will get hypos. You still will. There's times when my blood's crash in 5 minutes, let alone half an hour. And I think people need to realize that aim for that 70%, aim for that non-diabetes range. And this system can do that, but you still need to input your carb amount. So previously, loved my sandwiches, my carbs, things like that. But I used to do, that's 2 pieces of bread, that's around 30 grams. It's more about being very precise now with this system.
Originally, you were on pens, and then you went to pump, and now you're on closed loop. How have you found that transition from the starting point, or from pump to actually the fully hybrid closed loop system?
Yeah, like I say, again, education is key, and I have a very engaging team, a secondary care team, the DSNs and consultants. What I would say is, if you particularly don't have that, maybe sort after that care, because you deserve it and it's your full right. But that really did help. because I had the base knowledge of the pump before, I'd been on a pump for about 4 years before I was put on hybrid closed loop. So that enabled me to understand how the systems worked, the cannulas, the tubing. I prefer a tubed pump personally because I like to put it wherever, like today I'm wearing a dress, but tomorrow I might be wearing jeans. So for me, I just prefer tubed, but that's my decision.
Yeah.
And I think I already had that comfortableness.
Yeah.
If that's a word.
Yeah.
But the great thing about the tandem, the T-Slim in particular, is that it's got an option to have control IQ on, which is the hybrid closed loop, or just normal kind of pump settings without the sensor.
So you could turn the hybrid closed loop off if you wish to.
Yeah, for whatever
so
reason.
So it's that choice, you having that choice to manage your diabetes.
It's completely flexible, and I say it and I say it again. Diabetes, type 1 diabetes in particular, but also all types of diabetes, it's one of the only diseases that I'm aware of that every single person is on a different treatment regime.
Yeah, absolutely. You know
Like
what I mean?
your carb ratio, my carb ratio.
Exactly. There's not one set user manual. You know what I mean? If only, like, you've got diabetes now, guys. Here's a set manual. Follow this to the T. You'll be absolutely fine. What they say is that 42 factors that can impact your levels going up or down the side, 45 degrees. You know what I mean? It's
horizontal.
Exactly. It is so challenging, and it's so different between me and you, and it's just lovely to hear that.
And that's what the hybrid closed loop gives. It gives you so much flexibility, because at the end of the day, it does what your levels are doing.
Yeah.
So for me, it's amazing. But like I say, everyone that's listening, is if you're not too happy with being at 12 or a little bit higher sometimes, then this is not the system for you. And I think it's really important that we appreciate that if you've got a lovely HbA1c, you've got lovely time in range, and you're okay, don't go fix what's not broken.
Yes.
That's really important. But also, I think access to this will change a lot of lives. Like I say, for people like me in particular that had really high HbA1cs, and I know there's going to be people listening that have got perfect HbA1cs but really high diabetes distress, and they're going to go, what about me? I fully agree with you. And that's why we work with our DSNs in particular and say to them, like, look, I don't want to make my HbA1c worse, but in a minute it's going that way. But we must understand that the DSNs have got a lot of work to do. So yeah, find that balance, communicate, speak about what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Our final question for you, Yasmin, is there anything that you feel could be done to make the hybrid closed loop better for you as a person live with diabetes, or for a parent or carer, and also for the healthcare professional teams itself?
I think the awareness and education, easy. Being flexible with that. The more you learn about these systems, the more you learn about carb counting, the more you learn about food in general, makes these things a lot easier to use. So actually understanding, first of all, what is your sensor measuring? People still think it's a blood glucose. I know we say blood glucose, but no, it's not. And that's why we get variances and things like that. And I think that's really important. And we should all take responsibility for our own diseases, but also kind of communicate with the healthcare professional. Actually, you know what? I don't really understand that part. Can I know more? But I think as well, sometimes it's very easy to say, oh, I need help with this, but we need to understand the flexibility needs to be there. For example, I know you're a parent and soon to be a double parent.
Double parent,
2 children, something.
Yeah.
But for example, if you're working, you've got childcare, you can't all of a sudden drop everything and go on a 3-week course.
No.
So for me, I think NHS healthcare professionals need to understand in the long term, this is going to decrease their workload. I have not had a hospital admission in 2 years, whereas I used to have about one every few months. Okay, so we've got to think long term.
Yes.
But initially, this is going to take some education. There's 400,000 of us. Even if we get a quarter of us on this system, that's 100,000 people. So I know it's big numbers, but in the long term, what can we do? And that is going to start with the healthcare professionals. Education, education, education.
there we go. Thank you so much, Yasmin, for joining our diabetes chat stories this evening. Thank you so much.
No, it's absolutely fine. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Tom, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Typical, right at the end of the show.
I was waiting for you to bring me up. Like, you're on mute.
Oh, there we go. What I was basically saying was thank you to Yasmin for that insightful video sharing her lived experiences. We're going to hopefully get Yasmin on the panel in a few minutes just to finish our diabetes chat stories on hybrid closed loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump off quickly. But Mary and Philippa, what have you both really enjoyed from tonight? What have you taken away from listening to Partha, listening to Yasmin sharing her lived experiences there, and hearing from the community itself tonight? What sort of points have you taken away tonight? Put you on the spot now.
Will I go first?
Yeah.
I've been trying to word a tweet, and I'm not haven't got it out. But I've learned more things that I didn't know tonight, and I feel much more empowered because I think. Do you remember Partha talked about the Libras and the how well a clinician backed the Libra, just the language Partha used to support the work of peer support, and I don't know. I don't know why I needed him to even be so strong and talk about. We talk about it, but having him talk about it like that was just different.
I think for me, I found it quite reassuring because I read the draft and I was a bit like, okay, and I understand why it is like it is. You can't just give it to everybody all at once because there's not capacity, and you've got to start slowly and it will build, I'm sure, a bit like Libre and CGM access. But do you know, the things that he was saying were sort of how I would like it to be. Mm-hmm. And I so agree with the enthusiasm of healthcare professionals. We've had that in our area. Totally different on education. I was once at a meeting and the local, what was a CCG at that point, diabetes lead, said that something like 98% of people with diabetes, all types, in our area had been offered education. I'm just like, that's not right. And we were in a room. So I said, can I just ask, how many people here have diabetes? And virtually everybody did. I said, right, who has been offered education? 5 people put their hands up.
Wow.
And then I said to them, I said, so either this is my interpretation, they're not asking somebody to tick a box, or they've been asked in a way they don't actually know they've been asked. So do you know what I mean? It is a demonstration. But hello, Jasmine.
Hello, Yasmin. How are you?
Hi, Yasmin.
I just kind of popped up like, hey.
Yeah.
Magic.
Hi, everyone.
Before you bring you up to the panel, just to conclude our evening, guys, did you have any questions, any final things you wanted to ask Yasmin from her chat?
I was really interested because I caught up on Jen Greaves' podcast as well, you see, and I know you guys did TAD and then you mentioned that just at the end there with Tom about not needing to go to hospital. Since did you say since?
Yes, wow. Since.
And I just felt really lucky when I listened to your podcast and heard your story and stuff, and for your T-Slim to make that big a difference. I don't know how, I don't know what the figures are for hospital admissions in adults with type 1. Do you know that, Yasmin, at all? No. or do you?
Yeah, so well, I mean, 1 in 4 patients inpatients have diabetes type 1 or 2, but obviously we have to take that with a pinch of salt because 90% of our population are type 2, not type 1. But just by that fact as well, and when I said that, I'm glad you've actually put it up, because I want to mention as well that we forget we have other diseases. So when I say I've had no hospital admissions, that's been no diabetes related hospital admissions. Which I think is so important, because in Jen's chat in particular, in that podcast, I did mention that it used to be every few months or so. I mean, touch wood, I'm okay. And I haven't had any long-lasting complications, and most of it is due to just illness, sickness, and my body hates me, as do all of ours. So yeah, but the rate for admissions is something that costs the most amount of money for the NHS. So I think when we bring this stuff up, maybe for not our community, but when healthcare professionals are listening to us, it's a really important point to say to them, like, look, you're getting bogged down from the top on budgets, and I have not spent any of your hospital admission money, which does cost one of the most amount of that diabetes pot.
Yeah.
So how can you say this is not cost effective?
And inpatients, those with diabetes, those with type 1 do very badly compared to those with type 2 once they're in too. So
I mean, I can see the nods, and we probably all experienced before where it's almost got to the point of just, can you just let me deal with my diabetes while I'm here?
And that's a question actually that I didn't think to ask Partha, and maybe we'll put it in out in Twitter, but you know, with hybrid closed loop and you're an inpatient and they aren't specialists and you're not well enough to look after yourself, it kind of goes with the older age group and carers and things like that too, because like we have the nursing staff won't be trained.
No, and of course, I mean, like I mentioned in my video there, that I have an amazing team and constant communication with them. And until I kind of joined our community, and it was GB Doc in particular, I didn't realize how variable. I obviously knew there was some kind of variations in staffing numbers, but I really did not realize, like, some people don't even have a dedicated DSN. And I was like, how? I speak to mine like all the time. And I just think that's insane. But they then, if I'm in hospital, I don't, they just magically appear. They are fairies, but they're just there. But I also understand that not everywhere has that type of care. And I've been to some other hospitals where I've been like, can I check my blood sugar now? It's been that bad. It's been like, I've been here for hours. All my kit's been taken off of me. But with this, though, remember the hybrid closed loop, it makes it so much easier for you to look after yourself. If someone comes up to me and says, right, the nurse is quite capable of going, this is your food, this is the carb amounts, done. If I put that into my hybrid closed loop, don't get me wrong, like I say, not a magic pill, but it will keep me ticking along. And that's really important for that inpatient care as well. So actually, maybe this is an avenue we haven't even explored yet, and how this could alleviate some of those pressures and stresses of inpatient care. Because unfortunately, like I say, we do forget this is a kind of MDT, multidisciplinary disease that affects so many different organs. It's not always there for your diabetes. So yeah, I think it's maybe an avenue we haven't even, I mean, I've only just thought of it now. So
I know that isn't it Dr. Alistair Lum has moved into like inpatient work. So like with him being on the DTN and chairing the DTN now, didn't he take over chair from Pratik? So like we're in good hands at least.
Absolutely.
And I think it's not just inpatient care. I also think like we're all getting older and we're living longer. And let's be honest, we're not all going to be mentally capable of looking after type 1. And that's quite a scary thought. We might realize it, but, you know, when we get there. But you sort of think with some older people, a hybrid closed loop would take so much pressure off carers, but you do have the maintenance of it. Because even if the pump works, your set's got to be right. You've got to change the set when you need, change the insulin when you need. If it's a bad set, or do you know, like there are maintenance bits that, in a way, I think we discount because we do so much anyway. It's just like, oh, well, I just do that. But for somebody else, it's extra work. So I suppose it's balancing,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
the
And that's
advantages
where-
on one side, but also if somebody's got a bad set or something, actually it could go south quite quickly.
I can totally resonate with this here, like at the minute. So when Johnny's going through a difficult time with pods and bad locations and things, and you're looking at the numbers and you're thinking, can I do anything? What's wrong? What's the reason for this to be wrong? Is it a bad location? Is it did we not take enough, put enough carbs in? It's wondering what's wrong when it's not even in your own body. Like, and that's coming from a place of knowledge, not even coming from a place of like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm going to have to wait till the doctor comes. The doctor's not coming till tomorrow.
I think someone mentioned it earlier. I can't find it now. There was a comment earlier. I was watching all the comments and the tweets come in, particularly about this. And I think, Mary, you hit the nail on the head. Like some of us, like for me, example, literally have a degree in biomed. I studied diabetes. My whole life is diabetes. I do not have a life. But still, then you have these nuances as well. And that peer support comes into it. And that's where you then feed in all these little bits that we take for granted sometimes, that, and Philippa just said it, it's like for us, it's nothing. For someone, it may be something else. But somebody mentioned about, would there be a point in offering a pump that doesn't offer closed loop now when we're moving into this age?
Oh, yeah.
And I still think yes, because I'm on T-Slim fully. We all know that. I think it's amazing, but I can turn off that closed loop function. And I think when going on to closed loop, it's so important that you understand how that closed loop is working in the first place.
Yeah.
And how that pump is working.
This is what Partha did speak to this, and he said like that. Yes, they would need to be closed loopable, but like it's bringing people on first as a pump.
Yeah.
And then switching it on for the confidence and for like to show how to manage the numbers and show what how to manage what your expectations are. Like,
and I've spoken to people who DIY, and they've said exactly the same. They said if you do go on a pump, is just get your head around for the first 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Just focus on the pump, learn that, and then if that's something you're interested in and you can't get the hybrid closed loop commercial, then if that's something you're going to go down, then do it then. Don't just get your pump and then just jump onto it, because you need to, like you say, Yasmin, educate yourself and learn and have that lived experience, and there will be days you are learning, isn't it? And trial by error. It's
completely. The whole disease is trial by error.
Absolutely. And it's it's a big change, but it's a worthwhile change. But getting there doesn't happen overnight. Yeah, and like to know that, like I think, like so when adults are diagnosed, I don't think they're given enough information. I'm going to say this in a really broad way. Information about how difficult it is. I'll just take a few days off work. I'll get my head around it, and because you walk out the door with pens, like. But once you get home, so how do I do this? How do you actually go to sleep? What, like, because you're given a sensor, whereas when we were diagnosed, we had no sensors. So you were just having a bowl of cereal at 10:30 and like.
Wait, do you not still do that?
I prefer ice cream.
Oh yeah, okay. I need my bedtime snack.
Yes, I need that ice cream, even though I'm bolusing for it, but I need it. But I think what you're saying, Yasmin, is very right. You need to understand how the algorithm works in the pump that you've got or the system you've got, because I speak to some people and you've got to learn to work with the system. So some people still use tactics, whatever I can't think of the right word for it, for how they cope, say, with exercise. And they might sort of a bit carb load up front, so they're higher. But the hybrid closed loop, you do not want to do that, because it's going to immediately want to bring you down. So you're going to have more insulin on board for exercising, which is definitely what you don't want. So I think it's not teaching somebody how to press the buttons and this is what you do. I think maybe the education is actually learning to live with it, understand how it works and what triggers the algorithm, so that you can trying not to trigger it when you don't want it triggered, or triggering it when you need it, if that makes sense. Because
Exactly.
I think people are on the systems and they don't actually understand how to work with it and not against the algorithm, and then you're, you know, on a losing battle there.
And understanding insulin on board as well, because we don't, I think, pre-looping, like, how much insulin on board do you take into account, Tom? Like when you're doing something, like do you even think about it that much?
No, it's I inject my insulin. That's it. That's the thing. And what I'm really fascinated with hybrid closed loop and stuff is that the technology algorithms, the programs can suspend your insulin, and if you're dropping, and when I've injected, that is it. It's in my body, and unless I go and get more carbs to bring me back up. So that's one of the things. Yeah, I think it's of course on my mind, but it's
you don't need to know about it yet.
But I don't need to know about it. And that's the thing. If I went down the pumping route, I'd want to learn all them sort of things before going on hybrid closed loop.
Yeah. Because I think that's a difference between MDI and pumping, and then pumping to hybrid closed loop, is understanding where that bit fits in, because you can control that bit. Well, not that you can control it like in the totally, but you can understand it and be informed and make data-driven decisions from it, not just random, and think, oh, I've had an injection at 1 o'clock and it's 3 o'clock now. I've no idea really how much insulin I have. Could I go for a run? Could I? Maybe I should have something to eat. But if you saw the number, then you would, even though it's not 100% either, like,
of course.
But like, you feel a bit more informed about whether you need to like have a whole juice or just bring it with you.
Absolutely. So I think that has just concluded our evening. So amazing that we've just had this impromptu hangout that we didn't even plan to do. So I think it's been lovely to.
I have been on an aeroplane today. I am very tired.
I'm going to one tomorrow. I haven't packed.
But honestly,
I just got wet in the rain today.
But honestly, it's been such a fascinating night, hasn't it? Learning about hybrid closed loop, hearing from the community, sharing amazing lived experiences from yourself, Yasmin. I also liked the fact that we talked about DIY throughout the chat as well. I think that was awesome as well. And I hope that you guys have taken away something from tonight and enjoyed tonight's event. Thank you to Mary and Flipper for co-hosting tonight and entertaining Partha with all your amazing questions. It's just been really, really cool, hasn't it?
Really brilliant.
It's been great, guys. I've been on the other side for most of the night, and genuinely, it's been amazing. So.
Absolutely, and I've drank all my drink now. I've been sat here for the past hour and a half, and I've nailed my brew. So, yeah, thoroughly enjoyed. Thank you, guys. This will be on our YouTube. This will be on our website. Go back, watch it back, and yeah, keep your eye out for future Diabetes Chat story events. And again, yeah, thank you so much. And head over to our website, DiabetesChat.net, and on Twitter, and we'll see you soon. Cheers,
Big
guys.
Thanks, Tom. Big thanks to you.
No, thank you, guys.
Bye.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Bye.